Let's try to take a survey. This is using a different survey website than I remember. I probably have done one on Qualtrics before, but they're not often. So I don't know if when I get to the next page, because you'll see there's a button here, if it's going to put questions all the way to the left side of the screen or not. Otherwise, I would totally have zoomed in here so that we're not having so much white space. Anyway, you are invited to participate in a research study on patient safety. This is not a what if, this is an actual thing. You've been selected as a possible subject because you are a Doctor of Pharmacy clerkship student. I hate the word clerkship. Only the old people use clerkship. At a U.S. pharmacy school, we ask you to read this form before agreeing to participate in the study. Like the federal government has clerkship. Everybody else calls it your internship or your advanced pharmacy practice experiences or other stuff like that. The study is being conducted by Alan Zilich, PharmD, and Amanda Kobylinski, a different Kobylinski than the one that I know from my undergraduate institution, at the Richard L. Rudebush VA Medical Center and Purdue University College of Pharmacy. Purdue, love them for their chicken. Study title: Are pharmacy schools producing healthcare professionals that will uphold a culture of safety? IRB, which is the Institutional Review Board, study number, blah, 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 turn off my fan. Oop. My dog is on my bed with me right now. I don't want to sit on her. Yeah. Study purpose. The purpose of this study is to measure patient safety attitudes among graduating student pharmacists. It is anticipated that the results of this study can be used to assess baseline safety attitudes prior to the initiation of any formalized safety curriculum in U.S. pharmacy schools. It's anticipated the results can be used to assess baseline safety attitudes prior... Okay. So they're assuming that we don't have any formalized safety curriculum in U.S. pharmacy schools. Maybe not overall. Procedures. All Doctor of Pharmacy clerkship students at participating institutions will have the opportunity to participate in the study. Eligible students that agree to participate will be permitted to complete the Safety Attitudes Questionnaire. The questionnaire consists of 10 items related to safety concerns, followed by 4 demographic questions. The survey should take approximately 5 minutes to complete, unless you are me, in which case it will take, it could take quite a bit longer. Confidentiality. Your survey responses will be anonymous. If you choose to do so, you may provide your name and email after completing the survey to be entered into a drawing for one of 5 Amazon.com gift cards worth $20. Sweet. Your contact information will be collected separately from the survey and will not be linked to your responses, nor will it be appearing in this video. Your identity will be held in confidence in reports in which the study may be published. The project's research records may be reviewed by departments at Indiana University responsible for regulatory and research oversight in order to ensure investigator compliance with research policies and procedures for working with human subjects and chickens. Organizations that may inspect and/or copy your research records for quality assurance and data analysis include groups such as the study investigator and his/her research associates, the Indiana University Institutional Review Board or its designees, and, as allowed by law, state or federal agencies, specifically the Office for Human Research Protections, who may need to access your research records. Payment. Participants who complete the survey will have the option of being entered into the drawing. Contacts, blah, 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 blah. Voluntary nature. You do not have to participate. No one is holding a gun to your head right now. Or your dog's head. Aww. There we go. Pet the dog. If you have read the above description of this research survey, are in the final year of your Doctor of Pharmacy curriculum and agree to participate, please click the link to start the survey. Done. All right. Well, isn't that short? This survey asks for your opinions about patient safety issues, medical error, and event reporting based on your professional pharmacy education experiences. Please rate your level of agreement with the following statements. Select one response for each statement below. I find it difficult to discuss an error with another pharmacy student. False. Strongly disagree. I have no problems discussing errors with other pharmacy students, even other pharmacy students who aren't from my school. I've had, I want to say I've had multitudes of opportunity, but no. I think there's 2 ways to think of this question. I suppose there's 3 ways. So I'm not quite sure what they're asking. 1, I find it difficult to discuss an error I made with another pharmacy student. 2, I find it difficult to discuss an error that student made with another pharmacy student. Or 3, I find it difficult to discuss an error I know about through some capacity, either case reports, reading it in a book, hearing it from someone else, with another pharmacy student. This doesn't tell me which of those it is. Do I have difficulty discussing errors I made with a student? No. Do I have difficulties discussing errors that another student made with that student? No. And do I have difficulty discussing about errors in general from whatever source with another pharmacy student? No, I don't. I haven't had that issue. I don't know if I mentioned this. One of the students at one of my rotations, we were mixing up an antibiotic suspension, and she didn't know that the automatic water dispenser dispenses only half the water, and then you have to push the button again to get the rest of the water. So she mixed up an antibiotic suspension and only put half the water in. I didn't find out about this until, a couple days later when she saw me using the water dispenser and was like, "Why did you push the button twice?" And then she's like, "Oh no." So she didn't have too much trouble expressing that error to me either. So yeah, I'm going to say no. I see other healthcare professionals make errors that have the potential to harm patients. I'm going to agree to that. It's not an opinion. This is funny. I see other health. That's not an opinion question. Unless it's the opinion that they have the potential to harm patients. Maybe I think, in my opinion, that could harm the patient. Well, in my opinion, I think it didn't. I don't think that's what this question is asking. This question wants to know, not an opinion. It wants to know, do you see other healthcare professionals making errors? Do you see it? Does it happen? Yes. I actually prevented one of those errors on one of my rotations. We were doing TPNs, which is total parenteral nutrition. This is for patients who can't take food orally, and I don't even mean like they can't eat. We can't even put a tube down into their stomach and pump food in there. Patients who've had like surgery on their stomach or their intestines or whatever, where it's not safe for them to eat or have any food through the oral route for a while, So then we're going to just give them all of their nutrients and everything all kind of mixed up, not in like a slurry like you throw a bunch of stuff in the blender and liquefy it. It's actually just like the raw chemical compounds and stuff that your body requires in liquid form, and we just stick it to your veins, pump it right in you. So we were doing the math, because there's a lot of math involved to figure out exactly what kinds of things the person needs. It's very individualized, at least the ways I've done it. They do have like ready-made bags in that, but even then you still have to make adjustments to it and all that. So we had done all the math, and we were going to put the order for it into the patient's chart, and the pharmacist that I was working with put the wrong stickers onto the paper. Anytime you're working with paper charts, there's stickers, and they have the patient's information on them. So you'll put those stickers onto the pages and then put the pages into the chart. And so if we had put the wrong sticker on this order and then stuck it in the chart, if someone wasn't paying attention and they took that order out of the chart and then faxed it down to the pharmacy doesn't know what chart that came out of. They just see the patient's name on the sticker. And so that could have been an error. If someone's paying attention, then they know that they've got patient X's chart, and they flip it open and see patient Y's sticker on it. If they're smart, they see that, and then they go, okay, now I got to find out, should this order be in this chart? We need this clarified, and an investigation goes on. So yeah, I have seen other health professionals make errors that have the potential to harm patients. This is true. Disruptions in continuity of care can be detrimental to patient safety. I agree with this. Continuity of care. I learned about something very similar in my undergrad. I studied forensic science, and we have what's called the chain of custody. At every single point where that piece of evidence changes hands, you have to maintain chain of custody. I go to the evidence locker. They're going to give me the evidence to take back to the lab to analyze. I have to sign out, yes, I took this item. And they have to sign, yes, I gave him that item. And then when I bring it back to the evidence locker, I sign out, I gave them this item, and they sign, yes, I received this item. It's a very, very documented, strict procedure. If you have any break in the chain of custody, that's immediately going to kind of invalidate any evidence you get based on that. Any conclusions you can draw based on the analysis of that evidence, because you don't know what happened to that evidence when that chain of custody was broken. So that's a really easy way to get stuff thrown out of court. Anyway, when you're dealing with continuity of care, that's where, okay, the patient comes into the hospital in the emergency room. Their emergency's really emergency, and so they end up going to the ICU. When they go from the emergency room to the ICU, depending on which hospital you're at, they can have two different computer systems. They're going to have two different doctors. The emergency room doctor is not going to be, most likely, is not going to be the intensive care unit doctor who's now taking care of that patient. The guy spends a couple days in the ICU, then he gets released to the floor. That's another change in the continuity of care, because no longer are the ICU doctors and nurses taking care of him. Now it's the floor doctors and nurses. It's a different set of physicians, and even at some hospitals, even then, you can have a different computer system going from the ER to the ICU, and then another different computer system going from the ICU to the floor. Each of those different areas have different requirements and different focuses, so their software, the computer systems they use, sometimes have different differences to them, just so that they can help them perform the jobs they need to do. Depending on how that's all set up, you may or may not get all of that information transferred over in a useful format. So that's another continuity of care. And then when you release that patient out of the hospital back into on their own recognizance, then continuity of care transfers back to the primary care physician. And once again, he's probably not going to have the computer system that the hospital has. And so there's all of these areas. I'm saying continuity of care. Maybe I'm misthinking it. That's also known as transitions in care. So I could be misthinking it. Disruptions in continuity of care can be detrimental to patient safety. So now I'm confused. Is this question asking about transitions in care, going from the ER to the ICU to the floor to back out to the PCP? Or is it talking about disruptions in continuity of care where the patient is being seen by the same doctor, like my doctor? Almost after my pediatrician, all the rest of my adult life, I've seen the same doctor. But when I moved up to pharmacy school, I couldn't see my doctor here anymore in Arizona. So I had to get a different doctor, and now I'm coming back to my Arizona doctor. And so that would be a disruption in the continuity of care by my Arizona doctor. He doesn't really know what my Erie doctor did with me up there. He doesn't know what lab tests I got. He doesn't know my lab results. He doesn't know what we talked about. I mean, unless I go ahead and tell him all of this stuff, and I don't even know all of it. You know, all the lab results get reported to my doctor, not to me, unfortunately. But, you know, so if this isn't discussed, then there's that break in the continuity of care. I could have gone to pharmacy school and the stress of tests gave me a heart attack. And when I come back, unless I tell my doctor I had a heart attack, he doesn't know I have a heart attack. You know, he just looks at my he might see my updated medication list and it'll have some certain drugs on it, but maybe he just thinks that you had hypertension and high lipids. And, and then you're just, maybe you don't even report that you're taking an aspirin every day. Who knows? So, disruptions in continuity of care, in either case, I definitely agree that can be detrimental to patient safety. There's all kinds of things that can happen in there. I feel comfortable reporting issues to appropriate authorities. I agree. I bring up, this is a question they ask a lot too on residency interviews. They'll ask you, you see something, that could be improved, or you see something that you think is wrong. What do you do about it? And one of the things I always mention is, like, I had a question they asked me, say, you notice widespread practice where there's a number of different doctors all writing for the same kind of medication in what you consider an inappropriate manner. They're using it for patients that it's not indicated, or they're using it for patients where it would be cautioned or even contraindicated, or they're just using it at doses or dosing frequencies that are unusual. All of this part wasn't part of the question. The only part of the question was you see a bunch of physicians writing for it in a way you think is inappropriate. But these are the kinds of ways in which these kinds of prescriptions can be inappropriate. Maybe they're using a more expensive agent when there's a generic or cheaper agent available. Any of those things. So the first thing that I think of is, if I see so many people doing it, maybe I'm confused. Maybe I missed something. Maybe some study came out that showed, this is awesome, and I didn't see it. So the first thing I would do is ask about it, find out if anybody else knows about it, especially if I'm coming in like as a resident, or a new hire at a new hospital. Hey, why is everybody writing from these ways? And if it still is an error, well, then it becomes, then they want the strategy for figuring that out. But the same thing kind of here. I feel comfortable reporting issues to appropriate authorities. I have no problems bringing up issues. I have no problems reporting all kinds of issues to you people. So no. Yes, I do feel comfortable reporting issues to appropriate authorities. I see a problem or what I consider a problem. The first thing I do is not report, hey, this is a problem. The first thing I do is make sure that I understand the context. This is mostly due to the fact that I've been on rotations. They're only 6 weeks long. I don't really have enough time to build an intimate familiarity and understanding and context of where I am. So, my first thing is fact-finding. I need more info. Need input. All right. My suggestions regarding safety issues would be acted upon if I expressed them. I'm going to go neutral. There are definitely... Now, this hasn't really come up because I haven't made too many safety issue suggestions, as it were. But I have had sort of the impression at different parts in pharmacy, and not just from pharmacists, but just working, in hospitals and pharmacy settings, the other people that are around. Sure, you could tell a pharmacist, this is a safety concern, let's fix that. But unless the pharmacist is the only, person involved in that kind of decision making, you have to get a broader base of consensus. What word am I looking for? A broader base of support for it. This is a problem. Well, it means that we got to get the doctors on board. It means we got to get the nurses on board. It means we've got to get the lab work guys on board. Whatever it is, there's more people that have to be involved. That's why I'm saying neutral. I'm not even saying that these other groups are necessarily going to say, oh, no, that's a stupid idea. I've even encountered sometimes from pharmacists, this is the way things are done. This is the way we're going to do them. Even if there might be a better way, this is the way they've been doing it for forever. So that's the way they're going to keep doing it for forever. So I'm going to say neutral. That's kind of a crapshoot depending on where you are. I make errors that have the potential to harm patients. I probably have I've made some errors, not in actual direct... Oop, I'm sorry, doggy. I didn't mean to elbow you in the face like that. Okay, lay back down. This wasn't an actual patient. Well, it was an actual patient, but this was being discussed on a theoretical level. One of my first days on one of my rotations, we had a patient with methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, and we were asking about appropriate oral therapy for them so that they can be discharged home. And without knowing anything about the patient, I was asked, what would be an option? And I said linezolid or Zyvox, which is a antibiotic used to treat methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. And the patient was on medications that would have been contraindicated with that antibiotic. It's like, no, you can't use those together. If we weren't doing it on a theoretical level at the time, if he was actually, like a doctor came up and asked me, what can we give for, MRSA, what's an oral drug for MRSA, go. And I just said, Zyvox, and then they walked away, that would be a bad thing. So ever since then, and again, that was one of my first days on that rotation. And since then, I've learned, if you're going to ask me stuff, and this has come up again in residency interviews, they'll give you these clinical questions. And almost by definition, these clinical questions don't have everything you need in them. There's so much of what a real patient presents to you compared to what they can get out in, a quick question during an interview. And so they'll ask a question, and then it's now your brain is turning, and you're like, well, the very first step is, what all information do I need to know? I need to know the patient's past medical history. I need to know their comorbidities. I need to know what medications they've been on. I need to know how they're doing right now. I need to know what other medications they're on in case my recommendations have any interactions or any concerns. And so, one of the things I like is, in residencies, these are the kinds of thought processes and critical thinking skills that they try to instill in you. One of my rotations, actually, the pharmacist sat down, and every day we covered patient cases. I'd spend the morning going up to the floors, doing chart reviews, finding out what's going on with my patients. And then I'd come back and I'd look at the guidelines, and I'd look into, what do the guidelines say about them, and how are they actually being treated, and does it make sense what they're getting? Do we need to make changes? And then I would sit down with my preceptor, and I would go over my patients. I would say, this is, the patient, this is their diagnosis, this is how they've been progressing, this is their therapy right now, and these are my recommendations. And he would go over in detail, telling you, these are the kinds of things you need to look for. These are the kinds of things you need to consider. And I know that, at the time, this was my first rotation. He says, this is your first rotation. I'm not expecting you to, to already know all of this stuff. You're learning it. Just don't forget it as you go through rotations. These are the kinds of things you need to be asking people. These are the kinds of things you need to be looking for before you make recommendations. And that's really awesome. But I'm pretty sure, everybody has the potential to make those errors. I expect there to be an adequate mechanisms in place to ensure patient. I strongly agree that there should be adequate mechanisms in place to ensure patient safety. There's all kinds of research going on into this. One of the ones that I might get help to do, there's these clinical decision support software. And what happens is when you put in medications or disease states, these things pop up little alerts or messages to you saying, oh, the patient has this, disease, maybe they should be on this medication. Or sometimes it says, oh, you want to give them that medication, well, they have this disease or their lab values are here, do you really want to do that? And that's mostly focused towards the doctors. They're the ones putting in the medications, the new medications for the patients. But it leads to what's called alert fatigue. If these alerts keep popping up, eventually, especially if there are alerts that pop up and to you as the physician, you're seeing them and you're saying, one, sometimes they're unimportant. This happens a lot with drug interaction software. They pop up sometimes just everything. Anything that could remotely interact pops up. And as a pharmacist, you're like, that's not even going to interact. There's no possible way that this is actually going to do anything. And so you go through them. And over time, if that keeps happening, you start going through them without really reading them. And that's alert fatigue. And so one of the things that's being studied is exactly what impact does alert fatigue have? Where does it start happening? When does it stop happening? What can you do to fix it? All that stuff. So yeah, I'm talking not so much about the question as other cool stuff I learned. Medical errors are handled appropriately in hospitals. I'm going to say neutral on that because it depends on what hospital you're at. Some hospitals are very forward thinking on this. They acknowledge, an error occurred. The patient was harmed. This is what we're going to do to fix the error. This is what we're going to do to make sure it doesn't happen again. And this is what we're going to do to make it right with the patient who was harmed by the error. There are other hospitals where they say, oh, they'll deny that an error happened, or they just try and ignore the issue. I've seen that through the courses I had to take with safety. Just examples, real life examples of hospitals where they're not owning that the fact that an error happened, they're ignoring it rather than addressing it, things like that. Quality of teamwork impacts quality of care received by patients. I'm going to agree. People who work better in teams, you don't even have to be, you don't have to like the person you're working with necessarily, although that really helps. But quality teamwork, effective teamwork helps ensure patient safety, especially when everybody's double checking everybody else. My pharmacist told me, give me just a sec. All right. My pharmacist told me once, when a prescription comes in, for example, when I worked at retail, I, as the technician, would type it, he checks it. And then when it gets filled by the technician, he checks it. And it's not so much that he doesn't trust you to fill it correctly. Because even when we're in a hurry and some patient, something went wrong with the prescription, we forgot it or we messed up something, and we go back to fix it, he still sits there and he checks it again. And I'm like, you already know it's right. All we were changing is instead of 30 days, we're giving him 90 now. He's like, it doesn't matter. I'm checking it again. It's not because I don't trust you. It's because it needs to be checked again. And it ensures that no errors happen. And I really agree with that. Everybody should be double checking everybody else. It's not that we don't trust you. It's that everybody should be double checking everybody else. Because, everybody makes a mistake. And that one time out of a million that you make a mistake, I'm double checking you and I'm going to catch that. I like that. I find it difficult to discuss an error with my preceptors. Disagree. I don't find it difficult to discuss an error with my preceptors. On the one hand, I've caught my preceptor making an error. Didn't have a problem discussing that with him. I've also seen errors in the in charts in that, and I've discussed them with my preceptor. Where we had a patient, the doctor on one side of the chart. If you've never seen a medical chart before, the paper ones, They differ in form too, but most of them, on one side you write down progress notes. This is what the history of the patient so far, this is what they're on, this is, how they're doing. And then on the other side, you write your orders. Not you, but the doctor will write the orders. So it's like they'll say at the end, the patient has an infection. So for orders, there's going to be an antibiotic to treat the infection. That's the kind of things that go on. Well, in this one patient chart we had, the doctor on the one side said, oh, the patient's developed an allergy to this medication. And on the next side, prescribed that medication again. So that's an error. And of course, that came up, and it was one of our patients, so I discussed it with my preceptor. Would I find it more difficult to discuss an error I made with a preceptor? I don't think so. One of the things that I do, and it's come up before on a rotation where actually one of my preceptors could not stand that I did this. She kept thinking that I was being argumentative. If I do something and it's not right, or it's not like the best way to do it, and they say, that you shouldn't do that, I then immediately start explaining why I do it. And she thought I was arguing, but what I'm doing is saying, okay, this is why I did what I did. Show me where in that sequence of events I'm wrong so that I can fix that, and I end up, doing it the different way. Don't just say this is wrong and do it this way instead. I need to know where in my process that error occurred, because if you start from correct precepts and you make a logical steps each other way, you should end up in the correct area at the end. So obviously somewhere in there I messed up. But anyway, so yeah, I don't find it difficult to discuss an error. I don't really have any comments. This video is my comment. Next. All right, what is your sex? Yes, please. What is your age? Presently 29. Have you participated in any coursework? Yes, I didn't take an elective course. I took a required course. I believe it was called Patient Safety. Pretty sure it was called Patient Safety, or at least Patient Safety was in there. I took a course that incorporated safety training into the curriculum. Oh, I think I'm going to say Introduction to Pharmacy did something along those lines as well. I had an APB, IPB rotation focusing on safety. It didn't focus on safety, no. I took an elective course focusing on safety. I took drugs of abuse, compounding, and drug interactions. Yes, I took drug interactions as an elective. Not druff interactions, drug interactions. I'm holding my microphone in one hand, so I'm having to type one-handed. It's not easy. Have you had pharmacy work experience outside of your clerkship? I have had outpatient chain community pharmacy outside of your clerkship. That's the only one outside. I've done an independent community pharmacy, and I've done an outpatient hospital pharmacy, and I've done inpatient hospital pharmacy. Next. And I think this is where we're going to end. Yes. All right, so until next time, bye-bye.